Hi, wonderful people. I'm Leah Rapaner. As a sociologist, University of Melbourne professor, founder of the Gender Equity Initiative, director of the Future of Work Lab, woman, wife, and mother, I've made it my life's mission to take down every ridiculous gender myth out there. Together, we'll deep dive into the research to get to the bottom of all these misperceptions that are holding all of us back. Don't worry, I've studied these types of questions for decades, and after publishing countless articles exactly on these topics, I know when they are nonsense or real truths. And I'm going to help you learn that too. So here we go. Let's do it. This is Misperceived. Hi, everyone. On today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about this new parenting work skills certificate that we're launching today. Now, for those of you who have been listening to me forever and ever and ever, first, thank you and I love you. I'm very grateful for that. But one of the things I'm incredibly passionate about is how do we create futures that are equitable? How do we make sure that parents, mothers and fathers aren't left behind? And how do we make sure that as we move into these incredible transitions that are coming, I mean, COVID was one insight into what the world could be, but we are nowhere close to being done. And I know those of you who are living in the US right now are feeling that incredible speed of change that's coming politically, and we can feel the environmental change, and all these changes are happening. And one of the things that we've been working at our Gender Equity Initiative in the Future Work Lab is how do we make sure that people are prepared? How do we make sure that as you step into your work futures, as you step into the world, you are not in fact scared, but you are there and you are prepared. And this is one of the things that I think is my purposes in this world, to bring the academic knowledge, the stuff that I'm reading every single day, and to bring it to you in an easy, digestible way so that you can move through the world much more easily with good, high quality information and insights and make decisions based on that. Otherwise, what goes on is we're just moving through worlds that are busy. Our lives are busy. And the result of that is sometimes we're using shorthand or we're too tired to learn something new. And so this is one of the purposes of this Misperceived podcast, but we also have built out other things. And one of them is this training. It's called the Parenting Work Skills Certificate. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it today, but I'm going to also talk to you about why it's so valuable or why I feel so passionate about this is the answer. And of course, I'm going to do it through a research article because what am I if not a researcher? So on today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about this idea. Hey, is it in fact a misperception that parents or the transition into parenthood makes you a worse worker? I talked to a lot of people about this, about that transition into parenthood, and what I can hear from them. And for those of you who've gone through it, is like, it is life-changing, right? Being asked or called to care for a child or for a sick or ailing spouse or friend or partner. The idea that when we get asked to fully give ourselves to caring for another person, it changes us. It changes us in deep and meaningful ways, and it builds skills that are incredibly valuable. And I'm going to tell you are incredibly valuable for the future of work. And yet we often think about these gaps out to caregiving, these gaps out of employment to be a parent, to be caring for a loved one, to have a sick or aging parent yourself, right? Or a sick or aging partner as skill deteriorating. But I am going to make the argument to you that it is in fact skill enhancing. And this is what we're doing through our Parenting Work Skills Certificate. Before I do that, I want to set the stage for you. And I'm going to talk to you about an article from Amanda Coughlin, Simon Mason, Deborah Wittes, Liana Leach, Stacy Hoke, Shannon Bennett, Molly Allen Leap, and Jody Oakman. And it's perceived workplace discrimination on the basis of parenting status in Australia. Who is vulnerable and how does it link to mothers and fathers' mental health? This article is basically looking in the Australian context, and what they're saying is, hey, in Australia, we have these laws. We have the Federal Fair Work Act of of 2009. We have the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984. And if you're sitting in the US, I mean, you have the same types of non-discriminatory laws, right? There are laws on the books that basically say it is against the law to discriminate based on family responsibilities, based on your gender, based on pregnancies, and that this is a legal attribute, right? We have laws that exist that say discrimination is wrong and that we should not. But of course, if you ask people who have taken time outside of work to care, who have asked for flexible work arrangements, who are asked for accommodations when they have caring responsibilities or when something pops up in their lives, they get ill or whatever, that sometimes this can lead to the perception that you are being discriminated against at work, that your employer is not happy about that you are violating some expectation about what it is to be a good worker. And so they're talking about the fact that, hey, there's some research showing that, basically people who take time out because of their pregnancy or they take time out after the birth of an infant, that they report feeling like they're experiencing discrimination when they step back in. And that, of course, we know from the research that this is a higher rate for mothers, right? That 1 in 2 mothers, according to the Australian Human Rights Commission, 1 in 2 mothers are 49%. But also 1 in 4, 27% of fathers, they report that they were subjected to discrimination related to pay, conditions, opportunities, and requests for flexible work. So this idea that, yes, we have laws that exist. Yes, the laws exist because we believe that, caring is critical and we shouldn't be discriminated against work. Those are on the books, but yet parents still feel the sense that they are being discriminated against once they ask for concessions and once they step back in. And what this study is doing is that they're going to look actually not just at pregnancy and not just at that transition back into birth, which are 2 points after you become a parent that are pretty critical, but they're looking for employed mothers and fathers basically from birth to the age of 18 of their children. And in addition to that, they're linking this to mental health and occupational well-being. And this is true in the US too, that like most parents after they have kids will go back to work. That's just the truth. It's a high percentage of parents will return to work. This is like something new generationally. Maybe you had a parent or a grandparent that were once stayed home, right? But modern parents are both usually working. Australia has this really interesting profile in that after the transition into birth, that men work really long full-time work hours. They're working over 50 hours a week. They take very little parental leave and they very rarely make adjustments to their work hours after they become parents. So they're stepping into these like ultra breadwinner roles. But in Australia specifically, you have some of the highest part-time work rates for new mothers. That for new mothers, they take long parental leaves. They're much more likely to either leave the labor force, engage in some sort of work share, or return to work part-time. But they're much more likely to drop down to part-time work. This isn't necessarily the same pattern in the US, right? Where the US isn't necessarily having this high part-time work society, but it's actually a very specific feature of Australia. And it also is a very specific feature of the Netherlands. So in this respect, Australia is much more like the Netherlands than they are like the US or the UK, which is usually where we do our comparisons. So they're just noting that that's kind of a feature. They're talking about the fact that, what the expectation is that we are supposed to be ideal workers. I've told you this in multiple episodes, and it's just as true. Ideal workers are people who are totally committed to work. They're never interrupted. Work comes first. And this is what organizations often expect. This is what work can expect us to be: ideal, perfect, present, there, available on, a moment's call. The challenge is that children expect us to be the same thing. Caregiving demands are unstable. We never know what's going to pop up, whether a kid gets sick, your mother may have had a fall. Like, these are things that are unpredictable, and they create a conflict with being an ideal worker, right? It's very hard to be uninterrupted and fully committed to work when you have these things that are happening in our lives that are tied to the people we love so deeply. And you have to make space and time for them. So there's research showing, of course, that, mothers experience a motherhood penalty, that they often place care before everything else, that employers treat mothers with what they call suspicion and hostility when they're trying to work and care. And this is the idea like, oh, you want to work flexibly? No problem. But are you going to be fully interrupted by your child? And this is something that, COVID, I think, shifted some of these norms about this. We could see that flexible work really did work and more people got access to it, but you can already see the backlash around it. This idea that it's straining our productivity, visibility, etc. And this has been the type of thing that have been said about mothers working forever, right? Like, oh, you're from home, you're working at home. I bet you're just like feeding the children snacks and doing your laundry. Like, excuse me. Yes, I am, but I'm also replying to emails while I'm doing that and freaking like sending off a report with one person screaming in my ear. And that requires superhuman strength. And I'm still doing a great job. So am I superhuman? Yes. Should you give me even more money? Yes. Should you put me as a specimen of an incredible person who, although they cannot multitask, is slaying goals? Yes. And that is the story of my life. In addition to this, there's this expectation that fathers might violate ideal worker norms too, right? This idea. So we often think about like care disrupting mothers' lives, but fathers are wanting to step into more care than ever before. They are trying to be what is called a fully engaged father, being there for their children emotionally and physically. And we're hearing this across our interviews. They don't want to be beholden to work. They want to be with their families more. And so for those who are, maybe taking time out to pick up kids from after school or staying home when children are sick, that they can experience discrimination and bias too, right? It's not just happening for mothers. We often pit this as like mothers versus fathers, but the answer is mothers and fathers who take time out of work to care may equally experience discrimination. And I have a whole podcast on, fathers who are discriminated against or experience bias, when they try to step back into work after taking a gap. And that's in our AI podcast. But this is true. So they talk about this idea that, hey, fathers can also experience this, that, that if you behave in atypical ways, that fathers who do a lot of care are actually shown to be more likely to receive daily harassment and mistreatment. They're more likely to get comments, teasing, exclusion than those who don't do that kind of job. So this idea that it's just coming in one direction is not true. And so they also talk about like, hey, it's really hard for fathers sometimes to actually ask for flexible work because they're worried about like stigma against them, that fathers want more flexible work for caring, yeah, right? But they're worried that there's going to be a stigma or they're going to earn less money, and that this is actually true. Like we know that mothers get penalized for this too. So why would fathers not be fearful about this penalty? So let's get to their study. What they did was they collected unique data in 2016 to 2017, and they have about 5,000 parents. And they're interested in the extent to which they report workplace discrimination, and then what are kind of the characteristics of those who experience it, and then what are the consequences for their mental health, job stress, and turnover. Sometimes I do this for you because I think these are kind of fun. So let's ask you this question. Perceived workplace discrimination. How would you answer the following question? So this question can be asked by any status, like based on who you are or based on, where you come from, but it also can be asked due to your status as a parent. So you can ask this question of yourself, like in multiple directions. I'm going to ask it for due to your status as a parent, but if you are not a parent, you could ask this question due to who you are. So due to your status as a parent, how often would you say you have A, missed out on an opportunity for promotion, B, missed out on training or development opportunities, C, received inappropriate or negative comments from your manager or supervisor, or D, I hope I have the letters right, received inappropriate or negative comments from your colleagues. So if you say yes to these, you're experiencing more, discrimination at work, and no to these, then less. And for this one, they're benchmarking it around parenthood, but of course you could ask it for other kind of characteristics, status characteristics, your race, your gender, your education, all of these things. What they find initially is that mothers report experiencing or perceiving greater discrimination than fathers. And they're basically saying, almost half of them on some of the items are saying, yeah, that's happened to me, compared to say, 1 in 4, 24% of fathers. So mothers overall are reporting, yes, that they're experiencing fewer opportunities, that they're experiencing less opportunities for development and promotion. And they're saying these are much more likely to happen to them than things like negative verbal comments. So mothers are saying, I'm being actually boxed out of opportunities for promotion and development, and this is what I'm experiencing in the workplace. They found that the mothers who were most likely to experience this were mothers who were single, e.g., not married, those who had little kids in the home, preschool age children in the home, those who worked as a shift worker, so those who had kind of these unstable schedules. And then they found that mothers who reported being single compared to those who were married or partnered, those who had preschool children in the home, and those who were shift worker were much more likely to say that they were experiencing some degree of this discrimination at work. Fathers who reported a greater degree of discrimination also were those who were single and those who worked as a shift worker. But fathers who were in managerial or professional roles were much less likely to say that they, in fact, had experienced some form of discrimination. So they're basically finding, yes, mothers are much more likely to experience it. Fathers are experiencing it are less likely, but some variation in their experiences. And then they basically look at what happens if you've experienced this discrimination. Like, what if you have higher experiences of discrimination at work? What does that do in terms of your mental health? And what they find is that for both mothers and fathers, right, perceived discrimination at work is associated with worse mental health. If you're experiencing a lot of discrimination at work, your mental health goes down. These are related. They also find that if you are perceiving this experience of discrimination at work because you're a parent, that you're much more likely to leave, want to leave, intend to leave. They find that mothers were 52% higher, more likely to intend to leave their current job in the next 12 months. And for the fathers, it was 65% higher. So if you are in a workplace where you are experiencing discrimination based on your status as a parent, your mental health goes down and you're likely to want to leave. The fact that most of us at some point will transition into a caregiving role means that we are all at risk for this, that this idea that, to be called to care somehow makes us less capable or competent as a worker is such an outdated misperception. We have research showing that actually parents are more dedicated, they're more committed. This is now me on my own rant. They're more committed, they're better at time management, they have more empathy. And so there is something unique that happens in that caregiving experience that actually shifts us as people in ways that make us actually better, more empathetic, better able to understand other people's experiences, more efficient with our time, more committed, more serious. And these are all these skills that are so critical for the future of work, right? When I run all of the data on what do we need for the future of work? Okay, well, workplaces want us to be more empathetic. Workplaces want us to be more creative. Workplaces want us to be better with our time. Workplaces want us to be able to work across groups, because guess what? We're going to be more multinational. We're going to be more integrated. You're going to be able to adapt. You need to adapt and to be agile. Anyone who has had a small child in the home knows you have to build all of those skills. You have to become empathetic. You have to be patient. You have to be adaptable. You have to be creative. You have to identify solutions on the fly. You are actually building key and critical future work skills every single day through your lived experience as a caregiver. And yet our workplaces don't see that. They don't value that. They don't account for that. If you put on your resume, hey, I actually became a much more empathetic, better at time management, creative person by having a 2-year-old, they'd be like, why are you putting this on? It's ridiculous. I am here to say that this is actually a problem. The result of that is that people see that time out of the labor market to caregiving as skill deteriorating. And when I talk to parents who are trying to re-enter the labor market, they have less confidence, more fear. Are my skills less? I am here to tell you, and this is what our Parenting Work Skills Certificate is doing. If you want to be a part of it, it's open, it's online. Click on the link in our show notes and you can be in it with me. I would love it. I am here to tell you this period of time is actually skill enhancing. And the quicker we get to understanding that, and the quicker we can get organizations and workplaces on board to get that, the quicker we will have better integrated caregivers in our economy and a range of better outcomes at work. If I am an employer and I want to teach my team empathy and ability to work across groups, that is a very hard skill to teach, right? I would pay thousands and thousands of dollars for my team to learn to work better together. But the crazy thing is being a caregiver, working across groups with kids, different parents, caregivers, doctors, right? You're there working with this diverse group of people to make sure that there is a good outcome. Your kid will be successful, healthy, etc. And you bring those skills right back into the workplace. We often think about the fact that we build skills in the workplace and then bring them back into home. Let me tell you something. We're taking those skills. They don't stop when we enter the workplace. We're bringing them right back in. We can look at our colleagues who are going through something that is challenging that we've been through and understand with empathy how to help and support them. This is a key and critical future work skill. And parenting is not skill deteriorating, it is skill enhancing. And those are key work skills that you need to bring back in. This is the passion that I'm on. I'll step off my soapbox and let you go around and into your lives. But just let you know, we've opened for the first time ever access to this course, online short trainings to help you understand some of these skills that I'm talking about, some of the trends in the future of work, start to reflect on the ways in which, you are building these and then at home and then bringing them back into the workplace, and some additional content from me about why this is so critical. Let me be clear. I would love for everyone to know this. I would love for all the world to take this course, but it's important for individual employees to understand it, but also their managers and their workplaces. So if your workplace might be interested, we're here. We've run it before. We ran it with Australia Super as a test pilot, and it was a huge success. And for the first time ever, we're opening it up to y'all. Just something to note is that we are so lucky and grateful that this series is being supported by the Melbourne Public Humanities Initiative at the University of Melbourne. Thank you for listening to us. Thanks to all your likes, your subscribes, your follows. We are getting some money to support this. Thank you, the Melbourne Public Humanities Initiative. We are so eternally grateful. Thank you for listening to me. I love you. Thank you for listening to Misperceived, where you don't need a PhD, you just get to hang out with me. And I just want to be clear that I am here to help you be prepared and not scared. And that when you are stepping into that role of being human and caring, you are building key and critical future work skills. So I applaud you. Have a wonderful week. Mwah. This podcast was produced with the support of the incredible Sophie Squires, the wonderful Kate Danger, the fantastic Rich Berner, and the one and only, the best ever made, Serena Reagan. I would like to acknowledge that our podcast is recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today.